Welcome to this masterclass edition of Negotiate Anything. With over 1,700 episodes featuring some of the world's brightest minds, we've carefully curated a couple of powerful conversations for you. What makes this so special is that you'll hear how different experts from different industries approach the same challenge in their own unique ways. Our goal is to give you multiple perspectives so you can build your own unique style. Success doesn't look the same for everyone, and in this masterclass, you'll see exactly why. Let's dive in. This episode is brought to you by Granola, Shopify, and Fabric by Gerber Life. If meetings are eating up your day and you want clean, structured notes without the stress, try Granola AI totally free for 3 months at granola.ai/Kwame. Ready to turn your what ifs into a real business? Sign up for your $1 per month trial with Shopify at shopify.com/Kwame. And finally, for the parents listening, protect your family's financial future in just minutes. Apply for term life insurance today at meetfabric.com/Kwame. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Tamara, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So how would you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So my name is Tamara, but it's actually Dr. Tamara Beckford. So I am the CEO of Your Caring Docs, where we do a few things. We help organizations to reduce their employees' stress and burnout through self-care and burnout prevention strategies. And I also help private practices, because I am a doctor, to do the same by boosting their proficiency and productivity through their team dynamics. In addition to that, you're probably wondering, what kind of doctor am I? I am one of those emergency medicine doctors who were like standing up and taking care of all the people during the pandemic. And therefore, stress and burnout is something that I know a lot about. So I'm happy to talk about this today with your people.
Fantastic. No, this is great. And who better to come in and talk about stress management? And when we're talking about this, listeners, just a little bit of foreshadowing, we're going to talk about the difficult conversations that are required for individuals to maintain their mental health and reduce their own stress. But then also, if you're a leader and you want to create positive change in your workplace, how do you actually have those conversations? So let's start off on the individual side. When we're thinking about stress management and burnout, let's just start off with an overview. What is it that people are struggling with?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things I think with burnout is a lot of people don't realize like what burnout is. By true definition, it really is experience of chronic stress in the workplace. So we use the word loosely at times, in burnout at home and so on, but its true definition is really chronic stress within the workplace. And I call it the 3 Ds of burnout. And the first D is usually depletion. Depletion is when you're having emotional exhaustion, like you're just completely tired. You go to bed tired, you wake up tired, you're really sitting in the car and contemplating, do I even feel like going into the building? So that's the emotional exhaustion of that. And then you have depletion, you have the emotional exhaustion, and then you also have the detached depersonalization, which I call the detachment, where you're doing great work, but you don't feel as if you're doing great work, right? So the work that you're doing is impactful, but you're not feeling that, what we'll call like that dopamine rush, that really good feeling, that release that happens when you do something and you feel that, yes, I've made an impact. So when all of that starts to really come on, that's when you know that you're heading towards burnout. Alrighty, so the challenge with burnout is that you don't want to get towards the crisis mode. And the crisis mode is really the 5th phase of burnout. So burnout starts off with phase 0, where, you're happy you just started with your job. You have great ideas that you want to help to implement. And then you have phase 1, where you're starting to just feel a little bit like tired. Phase 2, you're starting to find out that you're having some of those, what we call the somatic symptoms, where you're having this headaches, your belly hurts, or you go to the doctor, everything's fine, but you just can't really put your finger on it. And you're starting to notice a little bit of that fatigue. Then you get to the burnout phase, right? Phase 3 is chronic. Phase 4 is the burnout. We talked about the depletion, detachment, emotional exhaustion. Phase 5 is the crisis mode. So you're having repeated depletion. You are not getting up out of bed. You don't find any enjoyment in your work. You don't find any enjoyment in trying to go out and even help. So at that point, the challenge with once we get to the crisis mode is that it can incorporate some of the mental health issues, right? Which is the depression and the anxiety. Now, we all know what that can lead to. The chronic depression, chronic anxiety can lead to more of what we call the mental health issues, where people are starting to have intrusive thoughts of what is the point? What is the point of even being here? So now you're moving out from burnout to mental health, where you're having maybe suicidal thoughts. You're having thoughts of just like, wanting to hurt yourself. So that's why burnout is so important. Like, we talk about it lightly, but we can see how it's really a transition phase into a lot of mental issues that can happen in one's life.
This is so important for us to understand. And I think especially for you as a medical professional, you can actually paint the picture a lot more vividly because like you said, we talk about it lightly, but we don't fully appreciate just how significant and problematic this can be. It's just not an inconvenience. This is a health issue. And so listeners, I wanted to make sure we started off with that PSA here so you recognize how important this will be and how important these conversations will have to be because now you know the science, now you know the background. You understand why it's so important. But then going into the workplace and actually setting these boundaries and protecting yourself and doing what is necessary and advocating for yourself, that's a completely different thing. So before we even get into the strategic and tactical approach for these conversations, what kinds of conversations need to be happening in the workplace about this?
Leaders. We're going to talk to these conversations from the leader's standpoint. One, leaders, it's in the term. Leader. So you have to lead by example, right? So when you have your team, you have to have the ability that your team should be able to approach you about these mental health issues, about these burnout issues, and not feel that they're going to be retaliated against, right? Leaders, we have to provide an environment where we are being preemptive, where we are showing the team, because not everyone is coming to your office. It's not everyone that's going to be in your company who recognize and understand these skills on how to manage stress. They might not have been from a background that does that. Their background might be like, well, you just need to just work harder. They might not even have an outlet. So you provide these resources. And the resources can be in the form of, yes, pamphlets and so on. But a great resource is, how about you provide the training for them to recognize how stress affects them, not just emotionally, but also physically, right? And how to handle stress from a personal standpoint. And then also provide an environment where the stress level can be reduced. Now, why is that important? In addition to the medical aspect we just talked about, there's also an increased return on investment. For each of the investment that you do as an employer or a leader, you're going to get a 3 times return on that because you're having less turnover on your team. You're now having a team that can work and be more productive because they're at their best and they can be at their optimal for longer periods of time. And also the cost benefits for having to pay for the long-term medical issues that occurs with chronic stress. So it's a win-win situation in really providing this for your team.
This is really, really great because there are a couple of things that I want to pull out here. So first of all, as a leader, one of the best things we can do to help our team manage their stress is by managing our own stress. I think that's really important because a lot of times we have that service-driven mentality where we're saying, okay, what I need to do here is I need to focus on everybody else and not focus on myself. But then we are getting stressed out and then we're sharing that stress with other people, whether we want to or not. So I think that's really important. Put on your own oxygen mask first and then start taking care of other people. And then when it comes to the next thing that we have to do here as leaders, when it comes to providing resources, is not just giving pamphlets and then piecing out. It's actually understanding the information and then really working hard to put this into practice within our organizations. Very important. Now, when we're thinking about the leader's approach to this, because we can truly use a win-win mentality here, like you said. And a lot of times when we're thinking about the conversations, we feel selfish when we're trying to focus on our own mental health, but we have to recognize that we are helping everybody around us. We're helping our teammates. We're helping our organization by taking care of ourselves. So we can really have a lot more confidence going into these conversations because this is not selfish, it's self-care. And if we take care of ourselves, then we can take care of our job too.
Absolutely. And that's the point of self-care, is really to enhance one's own well-being, especially during times of stress. So if you are learning how to do these management and these stress reduction techniques, when the stress level goes up, you already have something in your toolbox. You already have the arsenal. Now, one of the real great investments, or return, I should say, on investments of being able to do all this and learn it at work and even to teach your team is it spreads through their lives. Now they're able to use those same techniques at home. This is not just something that's applicable only during the work hours, because people's lives are continuous, right? You're going to have stress during other periods of the day. You're going to have stress when you go home. You're going to have family members who are stressed, even in your direct household. So everything that you're learning, guess what? You get to teach them. And now your household, the same harmonious team that you have at work, they can also now have a harmonious team, aka family, at home, because these techniques, they're all applicable to life itself.
Yes. Oh, this is good. This is good. For the rest of our time here, I want to dissect two major conversations here that have to happen. So first, we have the conversation where we're advocating either for ourselves or we're advocating for changes within our workplace to make it better. The other type of conversation is when we are trying to persuade somebody else to take care of themselves. Because you're Caribbean American, I'm Caribbean American. I know there's the saying, it's like, oh, this person's lazy. They only have 3 jobs.
Yes.
So it's like, cool, you worked hard. That's not hard enough. It just keeps on going. And so let's say we recognize this pattern in somebody else. And we're saying this person is very stressed out, but they feel like they should be doing this. And there's some kind of admiration that they have for working in this way, in a very detrimental type of way. So if you see that person in your life and you're trying to communicate to them that there is a better way and it's okay to take care of themselves, how do we have that conversation?
This is such a great question. When we are thinking of ourselves and not really just taking a step in a bird's eye view of life, we go hard. We go hard to the point that we are just finished. I kind of liken it to trying to wring or trying to get water out of a dry towel. Like everything is like completely done. However, when we look at others, we can see all the strategies that they need to take in order to improve themselves, right? One of the first things I said is, what would you do and what would you tell that person, that version of you? Number one, what is your goal? Because a lot of the times, the reason why someone is working so consistently and hard and hard and hard is because they're trying to achieve a goal. A lot of the times it's a financial goal. Now, this might not be the answers that you guys are thinking about, but I read a lot of personal development books and I'm deep into that space. So we're heading into that space right now. Number one, what is the goal? Is your goal a financial goal? Because there are more than one ways to achieve said goals. One of our, I will call it our traits as hard workers, type A, West Indian, Caribbean people, is if you want to get farther, you need to work even more. So it's a work more versus working smarter type of mentality, right? And it applies to that in living color thing. They say you only have 3 jobs. Yes, because you're trying to achieve. But how can you achieve that same goal by working smarter? Number one, what is your endpoint? Is your endpoint to get that certain number, or is your endpoint to get to that certain number and be able to enjoy yourself? Because if your endpoint is to say, I want to earn $120,000, okay. And so in order to do that, I have to work 3 jobs. Okay, that's fine. Now you're at the 120,000. What was the intention and what was the reason you needed the 120,000? Was it to invest in something, or was it to live this lifestyle of $120,000? So it's now to live the lifestyle. Okay, so you're there. Are you able to live that lifestyle, or are you at work?
Wow, I needed this 3 years ago, Tamara. This is really great because we can actually see how this conversation is a conversation that we can have effectively as we're working with other people to try to persuade them because they have their goal. But let's think a bit more strategically about that goal. Let's go deeper into the goal. What is it? Why do you have that goal? And then bringing lifestyle into that as well, because a lot of times we just have a very monolithic goal where we just say, yep, it's a financial goal. That's it. And then I'm willing to sacrifice everything to get there. But when we stop and recognize, oh, our goals we can move toward both at the same time, then that clarification on our goal can also clarify the strategy. And then we can recognize how this also becomes an internal negotiation too, because we have to start to challenge ourselves in the exact same way that we challenge other people.
Yes. You know what is the hardest thing for me to see as a person and also as a physician is someone who has worked their entire life, right, has done the delayed gratification because we're so embedded in delayed gratification, which means that the self-care wasn't happening. And self-care incorporates, it's not just the mindfulness, the gratitude practice, yoga, the eating healthy, but it also is the going to the doctor, going for your appointments because you're so busy working towards said goals. Now you've put that off to say, well, once I retire, I will be able to enjoy this, enjoy that, and boom, you retire, everything goes down the hill. You're not able to enjoy any of the things while your health challenges are up. You're unable to that yacht that you were able to buy. It would be nice if you have a yacht. Just call me. But that yacht that you were able to buy, you can't now enjoy any of these things that you've worked so hard for. Why? Because you were not taking care of self along the way.
Today, I want to talk about something that a lot of us put off, and that's life insurance. Now I get it. It sounds like it's a big undertaking, but if you have family or loved ones who depend on your income, a term life policy is an important step that you can take today to protect their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life is term life insurance that you can get done today. It's made for busy parents. It's all online and on your schedule. You could be covered in under 10 minutes, often with no health exam required. If you have kids, the time to lock in low rates is now. Fabric has flexible, high-quality policies that fit your budget, like $1 million in coverage for less than $1 per day. And there's no risk because they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, and they are trusted by millions of families. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to protect their family. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/Kwame. That's meetfabric.com/Kwame. Use my link so they know that I sent you. That's MEET fabric.com/Kwame. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. We've all been there. It's late at night, and you finally find that one product that you've been waiting for, but then you realize that your credit card is in the other room. That's when that iconic Shop Pay button becomes your best friend. It has all of your information saved, making checkout as simple as a tap of your screen. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. They help you to accelerate your efficiency with AI tools and give you world-class expertise in processing returns and managing inventory. Because of features like Shop Pay, Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet, which means fewer abandoned carts and more sales for you. See fewer carts go abandoned and more sales go through with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That is shopify.com/Kwame.
This is a journey that you're going to together. So it's the journey where you're working hard towards your goal, but you're also taking care of yourself because longevity is what you're working towards.
This is powerful. This is powerful. Yeah, because when you think about the quality of a deal, that's really what we're looking at a lot of times when we're negotiating. And if you're negotiating with yourself and the deal you come up with is, I will work myself to death until retirement in my 60s and then I'll have fun. You negotiated with yourself and you made a bad deal.
That's a bad deal.
You agreed to a bad deal, right? This is really, really powerful. And then again, just honoring the fact that it can be a both and, not an either or. It's not work and then or play. It's you can work and play. You can have fun and still be very, very successful. Now let's get a little bit deeper since you've been reading a lot of self-help books. So what is it that holds us back from accepting that? Because sometimes it feels almost inappropriate to enjoy the process, and pain seems to be a necessary part of the process. So what leads to that belief?
I'm glad that you used the word belief because our mind has been really trapped in a section of, and this is just not just an anatomical aspect of life, but it really is a protective mechanism that we have, right? So our mind is set to protect us and keep us in zones that are comfortable. And it's just like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. Stay here and be protected. So when our mind is set like that, anything that's set to really bring us out of that comfort zone, our mind throws in, I don't know if anybody else has this, but these scenarios that are just outrageous. Like I'm like, why would that even happen? But that's what happens to protect our minds. So when we're saying now, well, I would love to earn this amount of money and I would love to start this journey on self-care. Well, do you really need to start the journey on self-care? This is your inner thoughts. I mean, you're already doing things, right? I mean, don't you have to walk back and forth all day? So do you really need to exercise? I mean, you kind of are exercising, isn't it? So you're talking about negotiating. Your mind starts to negotiate some random, crazy, one-sided deal. We all know that, right? For negotiation to be good, both parties need to win. No, not when this mind takes hold of you. So a lot of the negative thoughts that happens that prevent us from really moving forward, it's really based on from a chronological standpoint of adaptation to life in protecting us. But right now, we don't have that saber-toothed tiger chasing us down. So no, we don't need to be under chronic stress all the time. We need periods of rest, but our minds under stress, right? So it exaggerates things. And for those who are not even aware, your brain and your mind cannot determine the difference between something that you made up in your mind and something that's actually happening to you. So your body will physiologically respond to whatever it is you throw in that you made up. Even if it's just a made up thought, your body will respond as if it's real. It can't tell the difference. So you're there saying, oh my gosh, when life hits, it'll be great to be able to, we'll use that same $120,000, man. As soon as this happens, A, B, C, D, E, and your brain is like, yes, all these great things will happen. Now, your mind gets into a thought, but wow, I should be exercising and I should be eating healthy. And maybe I should learn how to reduce my stress a little bit, add a little bit of meditation. It doesn't have to be anything deep. I am a person who I'm deep in religion. So maybe my meditation will be reading the Bible a little bit to reduce the stress. And you start to think about that, your brain will actually start to release. And even just the act of thinking of doing things and reducing your stress level goes down. When you actively start doing it, the stress level goes down even more. If you think about things that are horrible, your stress level goes up. It can't tell the difference.
That is powerful. And I think just the act of giving people permission to engage in this type of intellectual dialogue, this internal negotiation is powerful because it's not something that we learned in school. This is how you negotiate with yourself. We just believe that our thoughts are truths. They're thoughts. They don't necessarily need to be true. But like you said, our bodies will respond as if they are true. And so if we start to get into that habit of challenging ourselves in the same way we would challenge other people in a negotiation, now we can dig deeper and get a win-win deal with ourselves. And that's really what we want to do.
Absolutely. As people, we're more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And it's imperative that we use knowing how powerful we are and how powerful our mind, our body, everything is. It's imperative that we use it to our advantage. So you're going into that deal with strength. So use it to your advantage.
Absolutely. No, this is great. This is great. And just one last note here on those conversations. Now let's shift to conversations within the workplace where we're recognizing either things need to change for us or things need to change in general for everyone. When you are having that conversation, when you're trying to essentially negotiate upward in the org chart and you're saying, hey, this is what I'm experiencing, and I know this is what other people are experiencing. And then you try to have that conversation with your leader to create that change in the workplace. What advice do you have for people who want to have those change-making negotiations?
Great question. I would recommend, in addition to just bringing up the idea, also bring in examples of what others have done that has worked. Because there are many organizations who have invested within their team, and there are many organizations who want to invest within their team, but they don't know how to. And then there's some organizations, unfortunately, who are resistant to it. When you bring any new ideas, any creative ideas to the table for upward management, it's great to be in the mindset of the person you're bringing this to. So first, that person is thinking, oh, wow, this is either like, okay, this is new, this came out of left field. How can this help us? How can this help the bottom line, right, of the organization? And what is it that I now have to do in order to make this work? Have you created more work for me? Unfortunately, that's how the mind works and that's how people are, right? So when you bring these ideas, you're not just bringing the ideas, but you're bringing how these ideas can work. This is what I've seen other organizations do. This is what has worked for them. Based on how our organization is structured, we can implement this through this way because you'll still need to arrange it for your particular organization. We can implement it this way, and maybe we can start off by this, just a small chunk versus just throwing everything at them.
Oh, this is great. Negotiation masterclass here. So first of all, I want to recap this. We got first start with examples, not just from yourself, but from others. Because if you just come with a subjective experience, but no receipts, no data, no evidence, then we have to recognize confirmation bias. And confirmation bias doesn't always come from nefarious bad actors. Sometimes it just comes from people being people. That's just the natural consequence of your existence. And so you have a situation where somebody says, oh my goodness, I'm already burnt out and stressed out. Your manager, the leader of the company is probably already feeling that way. And now you bring a problem. Now it's another thing for them to do. And so confirmation bias, they don't want to believe this because it would be better for them if this wasn't the case. Absolutely. And so we say, all right, I'm going to circumvent that predictable psychological response by coming with specific examples. And now, just like a negotiation, we're going to come with an offer too. This is the initial offer. I'm not just going to say, hey, boss, here's a problem, and then peace out. We're going to say, all right, hey, well, I was thinking about what could work. This is how it could work. This is how we could implement it. And here are some examples of other organizations that have done the same. And just like that, you have actually not only started the conversation and conveyed it in a very effective way, but you've also reduced the stress that your boss might be experiencing by showing that it's viable and not as scary as it might have otherwise seemed.
Absolutely. And I think that that'll increase the chance of you being able to get it done because now you've given the evidence that it works. You've given how it has worked for other organizations and how it has benefited that other organization. I think that when you're going into the negotiation, as we talk about it, I mean, the person is in the www IFM, so what is in it for me.com, like that radio station. So once you're able to tap into all of that part of the radio station, what's in it for me, then I think you've increased your chance of being able to get it implemented.
Absolutely. And then if you start to speak their language, when you talk about the return on investment, how does this help the business? How does this increase productivity? How does this decrease waste and increase retention and those type of things? They're recognizing, oh, this is a true win-win. It's not an employee trying to be lazy and not work as hard. No, this is an employee who has a legitimate problem that's verified and other people are experiencing this. And if we solve this problem, it makes their life easier, my life easier, and the business better. Now we have a true win-win. And I just really appreciate how clear you were with how to put this together, because especially if we're feeling stressed out, burnt out, and overwhelmed, it's tough for us to do anything. And it's tough for us to come together and put together an effective negotiation strategy to address the burnout and stress that we're feeling. So
Absolutely.
I think this is really empowering for the listeners. So I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. And one of the things that is so important when we talk about like the stress and the burnout, one of the parts of the brain that it affects a lot is that executive function portion, which is what we just talked about, where you're making these decisions that are based on deep understanding and deep meaning. So to be able to get these processes in place prior to someone getting to that point is so important.
Absolutely. Oh, this is great. Tamara, I really appreciate you coming on the show. And can you let the listeners know again about you, your company, your speaking, and how they can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So I am available on LinkedIn. You can find me if you are in the world of looking for a dynamic speaker to speak on stress management and burnout prevention. I'm also on Facebook, where I talk a lot about our private practices, helping to improve productivity, proficiency, and team dynamics. Both ways you can find me is my Your Caring Docs website. That's Your Caring Docs, which is URCaringdocs.com.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You've just heard one powerful perspective, and now we're moving on to the next. A fresh voice with a new angle on the same challenge, so you can keep expanding your skills. Let's dive in. Manuela, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Kwame. Great to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you, my friend. So how about you get us started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I wear multiple hats. So I am a somatic psychotherapist, and I teach globally on somatic psychology, which includes working with mindfulness, embodiment, our patterns of how we resolve internal belief structures. So as a somatic psychologist and teacher, I also write, and I also work with business executives and do team development and executive coaching. So a lot of education, teaching, therapy, coaching, a whole variety of things.
Awesome. And can you tell the listeners about your incredible book as well? Books, plural, right?
Well, yeah, plural. I wrote a book on mindfulness called The 8 Keys to Mindfulness, Practical Mindfulness. And then I also wrote a book on somatic psychotherapy tools, which is geared for people who are therapists or coaches who want to bring somatic psychology into their work, which was really about embodiment. And then I'm also finishing a book on movement and how to bring movement techniques into the therapy or coaching space as well. And then I'm working on another project, which is around somatic psychology and psychedelics. So how to bring embodiment techniques into the psychedelic process.
Well, I use audiobook, but I'm not even finished with it, Manuela, because I had to take a second. I said, let me slow this down. But I already have, I'm over halfway through it. And I kind of just, I went on a binge. So I within a week of meeting you, I was over halfway through that book and approximately 30-ish pages of notes, single space size.
Oh,
12.
wow.
It's so good. So listeners,
that's so sweet.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Thank you for writing it. We'll put the link in the description for that book. And it wasn't until I met you that I learned about trauma-informed leadership, which I thought was such a fascinating concept. Can you tell the listeners about that?
Sure. Yeah, this is a program that I developed with a company called Abroad that I served as a chief mental health officer. This is really bringing all my learning and teaching and practice over, I've been in this field for about 30 years now of healing and health and well-being and therapy and coaching. So I feel like it's all kind of one umbrella, but I've been in that field for a long time and really brought a lot of the trauma techniques and understanding of how we understand trauma now to date, which is based on neuroscience, into leadership, because there's a lot of trauma at the workplace that people don't want to acknowledge. People talk about stress and they talk about burnout. They talk about psychological safety, which are all components of becoming trauma informed. But really at the core is understanding how do we as humans operate when we're under a lot of stress and trauma. Stress and trauma is on a continuum, and I could talk a little bit more about that.
You know that feeling when you're in back-to-back meetings all day? You're nodding along, trying to contribute, but in the back of your mind, you're secretly stressed because you're trying to remember exactly what was just said or who was supposed to follow up on what. Meetings can be a mess, but Granola AI fixes that. Granola is an AI-powered notepad built for the way real people actually meet. Here's how it works. You take rough notes like you normally would, and then in the background, Granola securely transcribes the meeting. Then it turns everything into clean, structured, and actually useful notes the moment the meeting ends. The best part? It works through your device's audio, so it integrates seamlessly into the tools that you already use. No setup and no awkward tools. It's just your normal meeting, but with superpowers. I've found that it lets me actually listen instead of frantically typing, so I walk away knowing exactly what was decided and what comes next. Before Granola, our team would spend extra time cleaning up notes and double-checking details. Now, we leave meetings aligned and clear. It saved us time and helps us to operate at a much higher level. If meetings are eating up your day, granola.ai is a no-brainer. And you can try it totally free for 3 months. Just head to granola.ai/Kwame. That's granola.ai/Kwame to get your time back. Get 3 months free at granola.ai/Kwame.
But we often like to avoid the word trauma because we think it's a car accident or something very horrific. And that's true. But really, the most pervasive traumas really in our lives are relational traumas, which happen at workplace. So being bullied at the workplace, or having a lot of stressors, or not getting along on a team. And so when we become trauma informed, we're learning about how humans process high stress through the body and how their behavior and their emotions are shaped because of it, which then impacts any kind of relationship on your team and the organization and your family life and your personal life. So becoming trauma informed is understanding how we as humans are biological creatures and we respond to stressors in particular ways. So that's what really trauma informed means. And when we become trauma informed leaders, it means I understand my own nervous system and I understand how my own, what we call dysregulated nervous system, impacts other people. So if I'm getting very stressed and very anxious and I haven't really processed my own stressors, I might get very aggressive with you, Kwame, or I might get very withdrawn, or I freeze, or have all these kind of behaviors that you then might read as, Manuela, you're being weird, or you're being strange to me, or being aggressive. But if you have a trauma-informed lens, you might see that I'm actually just very anxious, or very frightened, or very dysregulated in my emotions. And having that lens then enables you then to say, oh, let me respond compassionately to you. Let me have some understanding. Let me be patient. And so our relationship is a very different quality of interaction and being. And your leadership style improves because of that lens, that understanding.
It was a very efficient answer because you've answered all of the 3 questions that I had as follow-ups. So this is great. That's perfect. And I love the answer because it was so thorough and it helps us to recognize that this isn't something that is soft and woo-woo and out there where it has no validity or practicality. This is something that, yes, just as people, it's better for you to be able to regulate your emotions and have better mental health and stability. Just as people, that's true. But then let's say you're a competitive person who doesn't care about those type of things. This is still beneficial for you because it helps you to be a much better leader. And when we had the opportunity to present in San Diego together, listeners, I love presenting. I love talking. I love speaking. I love talking about this type of stuff. This is interview number 2 out of 3 interviews for today. And I just want more, right? And so this was the first time that I felt like I did not want to speak. And here's why. Because Manuela went up first and she was dropping so many gems that I said, I don't want to hear this Kwame guy. Can we keep on talking about this?
And you're fun to listen to.
Thank you. So it's so good. And what was really interesting to me was the connection between what you were talking about with the trauma-informed leadership and understanding your body, interoception, and all of those things, and conflict resolution and negotiation. I remember when we were supposed to be meditating, I was there taking notes because I'm like, I don't want to lose these thoughts.
What a bad meditator you are.
I know. This is great. And you said something in passing in your explanation here, and I want to really zero in on it because it's so important. You talked about how with trauma-informed leadership, we're learning how to process high stress through the body. And one of the things that I realized is that we are a heady society. So we focus exclusively almost on our brain and our thought process. And if we want to improve our performance, we have to focus on our brain. And it wasn't until I heard you speak and started to read your book that I started to recognize true connection between the body and mind. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
I love that you're pointing that out. Also, in particular, you're right. We're a very heady culture. And then we recognize the value of exercise, right? But we even often approach our exercise in a very heady way. Right? We don't really spend time really sensing and feeling our body. We kind of work our body out, right, to look better or feel better, or because it's good for our health. But there's a whole other approach to what I call embodiment, which is really spending the time sensing and feeling. And this is where emotions and sensations also interact. So when we're cultivating really the feeling and sensing body, we're learning how to read our emotions just as they are. But we have often this compartmentalization that anger is bad, sad is bad, grief is bad. I want to be happy and I want to feel good. And we don't really recognize there's a lot of intelligence in our emotions. And we need to learn how to be with these emotions and understand them without the charge of it. So when I am angry, I can simply feel the energy, or maybe that's too abstract, but can feel the movement of anger even in my chest, right? So if you're feeling angry, Kwame, where do you feel it in your body mostly? Where do you feel it?
I do feel it in my chest. I feel it a lot in my shoulders. And
Shoulders, okay.
yeah, I feel it in my shoulders. They get a little bit higher. And then also my breathing changes.
So what you just did is a kind of what we call a body awareness. So you're scanning your body. I just asked you, where do you feel your emotions, right? The emotion of anger. And then you described it to me. And that's kind of deconstructing it in that moment. So by feeling, oh, my shoulders, my breath is getting more shallow. I feel it in my chest, right? Basically in that moment, you're deconstructing that emotion versus like, I'm angry and I gotta, do something about it, or fueling the anger, right? That's fueling the anger. But if you're actually taking the moment, this is where mindfulness comes in or reflection comes in. You're going, oh, how is this actually happening in this moment? My shoulders, my chest, my mind maybe speeds up. So you're noticing. And by doing that, you're not fueling the anger. You're actually having this moment. You're allowing it to be there. And here's the wonderful thing about it. If you're allowing it to be there, the energy and the charge usually dissipates. I no longer have to go act out the anger. I'm just having it and giving it its due. And then I can go the next step. Oh, okay, I can take a breath. I don't need to be angry right now. I can maybe have a little bit more patience. I breathe into my belly. Oh, we call that resourcing, right? And that moment I can go, why am I so angry? It got me so riled up here. And now I can have more choices, because the thing about emotions in our trauma moments is they kind of snatch us. They become very involuntary. We don't have consciousness about it, right? So when we have trauma in the past that we haven't processed, it begins to live in our present very strongly. And then we roller coaster with our emotions. I'm angry, I'm sad, go up and down and up and down. And you're kind of becoming tethered to the roller coaster of your emotions, and it feels out of control. So you don't have to be that way, because you can actually go, okay, I have a strong emotion. What's it actually feel like? How do I sense it in my body? And that deconstructing itself and feeling that moment, it's quite magical. It takes out this intensity and the charge. And then I have choices again. It's like, do I really need to yell at this person right now? I don't really need to do that. Where's this anger coming from? Maybe I just need to complain, but I can complain very calmly. I don't have to yell at this waiter right now, right? For not bringing me my food quick enough. Oh, I'm being very impatient. What got me impatient? It's not about the waiter. It's what happened to me maybe 5 hours ago at a meeting. So you're beginning to have more of an intelligence of working with your emotions, because anger in itself is not bad. Sadness is not bad. Grief is not bad. All of our emotions are not bad. It's how we relate to it that makes it difficult or challenging. So learning how to be with the discomfort of emotion, learning how to just deconstruct it, learning the language of the body, which is really sensations and feelings, so learning how to be with that is really quite the recipe of understanding our own emotional life, our traumas, and then we become intelligent how we use our own experience going forward.
This is really, really interesting, because I think when we think about Western society, when we think about solving problems, we solve problems through what we would describe as proactive action. We have to do something. We allocate efforts into addressing the situation. And so a lot of times when people ask me about managing emotions in difficult conversations, first of all, they're focusing on other people. They think they're stable and other people need to chill. That's one thing to explore at a later date. But when they're talking about managing their own emotions, I think a lot of times people are looking for quick fixes, not just how can I manage my emotions, how can I do it quickly, and how can I get to a place of stability so I can perform faster. And so essentially, it's not really honoring the complex nature of emotions, but it's just saying, this is something that I don't want and I'm pushing it down. And I think one of the things that holds people back from understanding themselves on a deeper level and managing their emotions is their desire to get rid of it so quickly. And what you've talked about here is the value in learning how to sit with that emotion, being at peace with that emotion, feeling it and carrying and understanding the message that it carries. And so there requires a mindset shift to even be willing to accept that as a possible alternative to just getting rid of the emotion.
Yeah, it requires some training, actually, right? So we need to train, because we're often not taught that. And it's uncomfortable. We also need to recognize that emotions are uncomfortable. They should be. They're our alarm system. right? So there's a reason for that we are feeling uncomfortable. So if you go back to trauma, if you look at it, fight, flight, freeze, and appease, those are kind of the responses that we have to a traumatic situation. We are equipped with those responses in our body that are coupled with emotions in order to survive a threatening situation, right? So way back when we had to run away from the saber-toothed tiger, it was a really great idea that we froze and the tiger didn't want to eat us, or we ran away and we outran the tiger, or we fought them with all that we got and survived, hopefully, so that we have all these biological defense mechanisms to survive. But when the danger is over, we usually discharge this. And we discharge it through the body, through shaking, through crying, for having emotions, right? And that completes a cycle. So when we experience a high threat situation, we discharge it. And when we have safety, here's the problem. When we don't have safety, when we're not in a safe environment, then we cannot discharge those experiences in our body. And then they begin to live or stay in the body as memory. And sometimes memory without content. They become memory in terms of pattern in the body, tensions in the body. Often we don't understand quite what it's connected to, but they become then habits and patterns. So, and then when we're later on, we're no longer in that threat, but maybe we're in a social situation where somebody is emotionally hostile, or we're getting shunned, or we don't feel like we belong, or all those very core emotions of humans, those feelings in the body get triggered again. And now I'm behaving as if I'm running away from the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger. So the body remembers how it felt to be under threat. But I'm in a social situation, or I'm on a team, or in an organization, or in my relationship, right? But I'm behaving as if I'm under threat.
Listeners, when you have the opportunity to speak to incredible authors, what's funny is that you might speak to the author and then it reminds you of a story that you heard. And then you remember that story that you heard was in the book that they wrote.
Which story did you remember?
I was thinking about the story in the book where you talked about the woman who was had that fear of basements. Do you remember the story? Yeah. Actually, I was going to tell the story. Maybe it makes more sense for you to tell the story because you
read it just recently. Go ahead.
Okay. I am glad I'm not the only person who does this, because sometimes people quote my work to myself. I'm like, wow, that's really good. Who said that? They're like, that was your book. Did you write it? I was under trauma. I'm trying to forget that experience of writing a book. But anyways, yes. So the story goes, this woman, she would have really strong feelings of anxiety whenever she would smell mold or was in like a dark, damp type of area or a dark place. And it was kind of like an irrational level of discomfort that she was feeling, never really understood why. And it turned out that when she was a toddler, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old, she had an experience where she was being watched by her grandfather, who fell down the stairs in the basement, and there was nobody else around. And so she was by herself. And so she just had to be with her grandfather as her grandfather slowly died as a baby. She couldn't do anything about it. And it didn't really create a crystallized memory that she could truly access mentally. But it's like you said, the body remembered it. And so whenever she was in a circumstance or in a place that reminded her of a basement, her body would respond with that trauma response, but she never fully understood why until she was made aware of that story.
Right, until she processed in therapy. Part of it is that the olfactory sense is the oldest and is the one that also alerts us the first to any kind of danger. So smells, that's why we're often, triggered by smells. And then sound also, they're part of our ancient neurological system. So that's often like that. People have smells and they go like, oh, I don't know why I'm being triggered. And then they're having the fight, flight, freeze, and appease responses come up because they're triggered by a sound or a smell or touch. Right? And that they don't have necessarily the memory, concrete memory, especially if they're under 3, to really remember what actually happened. So it often comes through body experiences like that. Because the way our brain develops until age 3, we have a lot of neural growth. And it's very sensate. A young child their whole world is feeling and sensing. And so these traumas that are experienced under 3, but also, until about 6 as well, it's very sensate based. So, clients often come in and they say, gosh, I know something happened. I don't know what. Well, they can't often remember, quote, what happened because their body remembers it. They maybe heard a story, but they don't remember a concrete story, but their body is completely remembering the story. And it's often for people who are working on early childhood trauma, it's very confusing because they go like, did it happen? Did it not happen? Right? It can be quite crazy making. But the experience of terror happened, no matter what the actual story is, but the experience of terror happened. And that's what you can work with. That's what's so beautiful. And this is really the work of somatic experiencing, Peter Levine, who I studied with and learned from, where the recognition that trauma really happens in the body. And then we kind of make meaning of what happens through our mind and trying to understand what actually happened. But if you're too young, like under age 3, where you don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex, you can't even understand your experience because you have no context for it, right? So all of your experience is very body-based. So you walk into a room and it feels unsafe and people are smiling at you. So what is the unsafe part about it? There's something that your body recognizes, right? And it could be a glance. And probably you know this, like people can look at you in a funny way or give you a fake smile. It's called the Duchenne smile, by the way, that doesn't feel genuine. And it feels like a threat because it is, right? And if you grew up in an environment where there was a lot of dissonance or disconnect, inauthenticity, then you can feel this, like this doesn't feel right to me and I don't feel safe. And the experience of not feeling safe is a very sensate experience.
Yeah. And I think, sorry, go ahead.
No, but this is why we talk about psychological safety being so important in work environments, right? Because you can say, oh, we create a safe work culture, but if you don't feel safe, that's real. So what is it, right? And what's your body telling you? And it doesn't necessarily mean other people are doing something. It's like, I don't feel safe, so I need to listen to that. So what do I need to do to make myself feel safe? And often it's starting with the discomfort, the feelings, giving it some space, really tuning into it as intelligence, not to fuel a story. And that's really the important part, not to fuel the narrative, but to go, what's actually happening? What is actually happening right now? Is this really true? I'm in this room. I feel unsafe. People look really friendly. I feel unsafe. So what's happening right now? Oh, I need to stand up. I need to walk around. I need to get a glass of water. I need to feel my feet on the ground. I need to connect with one person that I feel safe with. Oh, now I'm calming down. Now I'm regulating my own nervous system. And suddenly this room doesn't feel so unfriendly anymore. Very interesting. So I just got triggered. But I could also go in this room. These are terrible people. I never want to be with them again. Run out of the door. And now I have reaffirmed my narrative that the world is unsafe and people like that are not safe. Right. And that's unfortunately, a lot of people live in that quite a bit. They fuel the narrative and don't really understand the interoceptive experience and deconstruct it and give it enough space to feel the intelligence of what can be done about that moment. There's a lot of control and choice you actually have.
Yeah, it's so interesting because the term interoception, I didn't know of that term at all until I met you, which is fascinating. Spending my life dedicated to conflict resolution and having a degree in psychology, the fact that has never been in my consciousness, I think is indicative of the challenge that we've been describing, where we are a heady culture and there's almost like a bias against something that doesn't have a solution that is head oriented or head centric. And one of the most liberating things about this approach for me is that I don't need to fully understand what I'm feeling. I just need to feel it and honor it. And that is understanding enough. And that is something I'd love you to go deeper in, because it's almost like internal body language.
Yeah. I mean, you start with that, right? You start with what is this? What is this feeling, right? Letting it be there, not having to fight it, make a story about it, push it away. You're just letting it be there. Give it some space. And you're absolutely right. Earlier said shifting the mindset. You have to shift the mindset that actually all emotions are intelligent. And I really want to repeat that. All emotions are intelligent. People don't think that way often. They think, oh, as I said, to categorize, this is good, this is bad. But what if you sit in this mindset that all emotions are intelligent and I'm having whatever emotion right now? And it's often the one like, yeah, all emotions are intelligent except this one. People will tell you, oh yeah, all of them, but except this one, right? Well, that's exactly the one that's now your teacher. That is the teacher, right? The one that you struggle most with. Oh, I'm okay with being sad, but not okay being angry. Usually people struggle with anger a lot, right? Because anger has often this feeling of it's bad or causes a lot of damage. But anger in its purest form is actually what I would call discriminating awareness. You actually have a lot of awareness that something is maybe right or wrong, or I need to set a boundary, or something is not okay, or I need to stand up for it, or I need to speak my truth. But you can't get to this knowledge until you give your emotions some space. You don't have to analyze it. You don't have to do anything about it. You're simply allowing it to be there. So let myself feel it. Oh, it's uncomfortable. I feel this heat. Like earlier, I described all these bodily sensations that went with the feeling of anger when I asked you to recall it, right? Oh, that's how I process anger in my body. And what are usually then my behaviors that follow the feeling and the sensation? Do I lash out? Do I yell at people? Do I get passive aggressive? What are some of my repertoire of how I discharge or offload my anger? Do I need to do that? Right? So, because often we feel very involuntary with our emotions. We feel like we have to just like do our emotion, right? Especially around conflict. Because you do a lot with conflict and negotiation. And there's a lot of heated emotions, right? But we often believe the intensity of those emotions versus like, oh, there's a lot of intensity. Let me calm this down. Let me regulate. This is the language of neuroception and nervous system language. Let me regulate this down. I don't have to have anger go away. But can I use the intelligence of anger to tell me what is actually the next step? Do I need to be very clear or very decisive or very sharp or make a point? And I'm sure you can tell me a lot about that. If I'm negotiating, I need to be clear and I need to be without kind of charge to really be heard. Because when people hear you clearly without the charge, they can actually take your argument or they can be in a negotiation versus defending against the charge and the emotion that you're bringing to the conversation. Because then you're just triggering each other. I'm sure you have a lot to say about that. Interoception is really learning about the skill of inhabiting your feeling and allowing it to be there. And then again, as a deconstructing a little bit, like what am I habitually going towards versus what actually are the choices that I have?
So interesting. Tell me what you think about that. Let me allow you to see my mind wanderings here. And if I'm off on that, let me know where I'm off.
Go for it.
And
No, I love it.
yeah, so I like the teachings of Carl Rogers. And one of the things that he would say in his Rogerian approach is that he liked to think of your body as like your human. Like, what does your human need? And I've been looking at it kind of through that lens and just recognizing my human, my body has intelligence. Like you said, the feelings carry a message and trying to figure out what that is. And almost in a metacognition type of way, having a conversation with my body. Okay, my body, my human, my Kwame is feeling something. It's registering through my stomach and it does not feel good. I would prefer not to have it, but I'm going to sit in it. I wasn't feeling this way in the morning. I wasn't feeling this way when I came back from the gym. But then when I got a message from somebody, that's when I started to feel that. What is that? That's interesting. What I've found is that separating my body and mind to a certain extent in order to have that kind of almost conversation with my body to see what message it's carrying has been beneficial. But I can also see how that could potentially be problematic because I am adding narratives to something that may not have a discernible narrative.
So I would say going more the somatic approach. Soma, by the way, means the body. It's Greek. Going a somatic approach is you would just go like, the stomach. What's it feel and sense like right now? Is it a clenching? Is it a tightening? Is it kind of coming in like a little ball? So you're getting very nuanced with what exactly is the sensation. And right there, so much information gets revealed because what happens is you're allowing the creativity of your brain to open up versus like, I have a stomach. It must have been because I ate that sandwich or because I had this bad conversation. That's very literal, trying to search for meaning, which is fine. But if you want to go a little deeper to understand really the beauty and the complexity of our emotional and somatic life, you give it space. You literally give it space. Just go, okay, I have this clench or this sensation in my body. Then is it bigger? Is it like a ball? Is it tightening? And when you get those little details, first of all, you're beginning to regulate. You're actually calming down the intensity, which is always good, right? And you're allowing another, what we call resourcing to come in. You can do even a breath, right? Let me calm it down a little bit. Let me resource my body. And then I begin to shift my perception. Rather than the kind of, what is this? And like that, what you call heady, right? That thinking mind, what is this? You're relaxing that. And then you go like, what's the sensation now? Wow, it feels I feel vulnerable. Oh my God, I didn't realize. I feel like weeping. But you don't get there. Usually to the more tender feelings, usually vulnerability or shame or some kind of sensitivity. We don't get there because we're so defended most of the time. But we get there when we give it a little bit of space and we have this kind approach to the body. The body wants to be invited, not told what to do. If you really want to work with your body mind, you want to invite the body and not like, tell me now, what is it? You don't want to have this conversation with the body. The body goes, no. I give you more tension. But if you say, hey, you're having a kind of a jumble in the belly there, let's just breathe into it. Let's just give it a moment of space. Let's just relax into it. Let's really relax into it. Guess what? The body goes, thank you. It goes, you know what? I feel really scared. That conversation really freaked me out. I feel scared about the future or whatever it is, right? Usually it's some kind of vulnerability that we're defended against or some kind of pain that we're defended against. That's usually what's underneath those things. How does it resonate with your stomach right now?
Oh, no, I felt it. It's, it's interesting that I felt it at that time. Good call out there, by the way. That was good. Because I think that, again, I'm very heady. I'm trying to become a little bit more, have a little bit more of that body intelligence. And I'm recognizing that just accepting the fact that releasing a little bit of control is the key to getting to where I want to go. That's a scary proposition. And I think a lot of people struggle with that element of letting go of that control.
Yeah, it's such a nice little trance that we think we're in control of our lives. We are not. We are really not. Doesn't mean we can't be ambitious or go for our dreams or none of that or be efficient and productive, all good stuff, right? But we also have some humility towards life itself that we're not in control. And so why struggle? Like, just relax into it. You know, it's like, oh, I'm just scared. I'm just vulnerable. Or this really got to me. And that's all right. You know, that kind of, you talked about Carl Rogers and his humanistic approach, being a human, right? Being a human is being vulnerable. And there's so much power and strength in being vulnerable. And that's where we connect. It's how, this is the beauty, right? So we talked about trauma, but the other piece of trauma is also that we're wired for connection. We're wired for survival, but we're also wired for connection. And how do we get to connection? Through vulnerability, through sharing our humanity, through sharing our struggles, right? And then we feel connected, and that's when we belong. And we go, oh, you struggle the same thing as I do? Oh, gosh, now I feel not so alone in this world, in this life journey, right? But we somehow feel like we need to be in control and got it all figured out and charge ahead. And it's, how has that worked out for humanity so far?
Oh, funny. Yeah, I see some flaws in that approach.
Right. It is. It makes things harder. And then, the truth is we're all vulnerable beings on this planet. And we all want the same thing. We want to be thriving and productive and connecting and have contentment. And I avoid the word happy because that's short-lived, but we want contentment and right. But we all want the same thing.
Oh, this is so good. And listeners, now you can see why I love hanging out with Manuela and talking to Manuela all the time. This is great. Well, Manuela, I appreciate this. It was another masterclass for me, and I know the listeners got a lot out of it too. But before you go, let the listeners know about how they can get in touch with you and about your work.
Through our institute called embodywise.com. So we teach courses in somatic psychology and a body of work called Hakomi. It's a mindfulness-based psychotherapy that we teach, and we teach all kinds of different classes and workshops. But through Embodywise, you can reach me.
Appreciate it, Manuela. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Kwame. Thanks for having me.
That's the power of a masterclass. One topic, multiple lenses, and real-world application. Negotiation isn't theory. It's practice. It's self-awareness. It's choosing courage over comfort. So pick one insight today and apply it in your next conversation, because skill doesn't come from listening. It comes from doing. I'll catch you in the next one. Hey, if you're still here, that means you really like this episode. So why don't you leave us a review? 5 stars, please. That really means the world to us, and it helps other people find the show. And now, I will catch you later.